our best. They have helped us with this presentation. We've presented to the Sustainability Advisory Board, but we are no experts. So give us your best questions, but we will also maybe need to get back to you. So thank you for that grace tonight for that piece. So again, tonight we're going to do a little bit of an overview of the capital projects, kind of high level. As a reminder, our first session really highlighted the capital projects. Our second one highlighted financial stewardship, and tonight again is around that sustainability. So we'll talk a deep dive into the current conditions of the facilities that we're talking about, some desired improvements and those impacts that they have on our sustainability goals, and then some next steps. So just as a reminder for the three projects we're talking about, the sustainability or the service center was built in 1973, back when we had a population of about 3,500 residents. City Hall was built in 1985 when we had just over 9,000 residents, and the Recreation Center was built in 1990. And so the city's evolved a lot over those multiple decades. We have both increased services, but increased demands and needs from our community, which is something that we're trying to address with the facilities that we currently own. So again, the projects under consideration are the Bob Burger Recreation Center, the Civic Center, and our Service Center. We chose these three projects because while we have a lot of different assets that we'll be needing to evaluate, these three are largely at the end of their lifespan and are very public facing and serve the majority of our residents. So just as a reminder again, the project costs for the three projects that we're talking about are $34 million for the Rec Center and Civic Center, and the Service Center just over $6 million, which brings us to about a $5.9 million annual debt service. Again, we've been highlighting kind of how these projects and how this exploration aligns with our strategic outcomes. So tonight, again, is focused on that environmental stewardship and excellent city services and infrastructure. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Megan to present the remainder of the presentation.
Thank you, Manager Dolling. Okay, so when we talk about these projects tonight, we're going to primarily be talking about kind of the sustainability elements and potential for the projects, and looking at the current conditions around from kind of an environmental responsibility and sustainability lens. So sort of guiding this for the city is our climate action plan. So we have a climate action plan that was adopted last year by the city, and there are several aspects of the climate action plan that are guiding our work in this area. First is around renewable energy and support. We have a specific priority in the climate action plan that specifically outlines this for the city to really seek opportunities for Xcel Energy programs, but also enrolling in renewable energy programs and expanding our renewable energy programs. Also making energy efficiency improvements and making our city facilities more energy efficient and with electrification options. And then also looking at our water infrastructure for city facilities and developing conservation strategies for city facilities and for our parks. So we've really kind of paid attention to those in our preliminary designs, but also in thinking about what we need to prioritize as we're moving forward. When we completed the assessments for our facilities and looking at the facilities, we had some guiding principles that intersected with the climate action plan. And one of them was to really embody both the climate action plan, but also the community at large's commitment to environmental stewardship in promoting resource efficiency, green building principles, and no carbon emissions. And then to really balance these needs, we know that we have a lot of financial pressures. Again, the previous conversation that we had with the community on these projects was around financial stewardship. And so really how we can balance meeting our needs around sustainability with our kind of long-term financial planning and the financial impacts of these projects as well. And then we also want to really look at flexibility use of these facilities and the use of the materials in these facilities. I'm going to start by talking about the Bob Burger Recreation Center. If you're not familiar with the project that we're talking about for the BBRC, this is a project where we will maintain the recreation center, so it's not a complete rebuild of the recreation center, and do an addition, which is about a 30% expansion of the space at the BBRC. The primary part of the expansion will be the aquatic center, so it would be basically rebuilding the aquatic center and then adding on some additional fitness space and adding on some additional space for community use. So potentially for space for older adults, for teen space that can be used as more of kind of community space. Currently, our recreation center is just about 46,000 square feet, and our energy use at the site, at the facility, is just over 1 million kilowatts of annual energy use. We have kind of two sources of renewable energy. The city buys solar. We have some different solar contracts through solar gardens throughout Colorado that we buy solar energy through. Right now, we buy solar energy from a solar garden for just over what our energy use is, our typical energy use is at 1.2 million. And it's because it covers the total use. It fluctuates a little bit. And then we have 70,000 kilowatt hours of on-site solar production. So that's actually solar thermal. And that solar energy is used directly to heat the water. And then the water that is heated is actually heating the kiddie pool there where there's a water feature, and then the lazy river pool. And then we usually heat more than enough water for those two pools, and then it overruns into the lap pool to help keep the kind of equalize the temperature in the lap pool. So that's what we currently have on site. The heating and cooling systems for the facility are all gas rooftop systems. And again, we have solar heating for some of the water heating, and then we have gas boiler systems as well. The building envelope for that building, because it is a 1980s building, if you've been in there, you know that it's kind of concrete brick. It's a pretty leaky building. It has original windows and kind of limited air sealing and roofing, kind of poor roofing around the kind of junctions. And then the lighting is really mixed. We have some electric in some LED lighting in the natatorium, but all the pool lighting is LED, and we have kind of mixed lighting throughout. So there's a lot of opportunity with this facility to be more energy efficient. And there's also a lot of opportunity I'll show you with just the condition of the facilities and the mechanical systems there, and also the way that the facility is configured. So if you were paying attention at all to the city news last summer, you might have seen that we had some issues with leaks at the pool. The leaks were required a full shutdown of the pool for about 6 months, and really required us to fully, remove sections of concrete at the pool. The way that our pool was designed so many years ago, we can't really access the pipes to make the major repairs of the pipes that are required with a pool this old. It's really at the end of life for an aquatic system. And so we had to completely remove the concrete in order to make the repairs that we needed to make. You can see the boiler on the right is very old. And so we've had to make just a lot of repairs to all of the mechanical systems and also to the pipes. So a new pool and entire kind of pipe system, boiler system would be configured much differently, more compact with less kind of pipes that are stretching all around that would have a lot of potential for leakage. That would be all with one mechanical room that would be easier to access. It would make it much more efficient, energy efficient, and much more easy to maintain. So in terms of the proposed improvements, if you have not seen this, just to sort of share that the bluish areas are the new additions that I mentioned of space. And again, these are very preliminary. Any design that we've done is really just kind of sketch plan level design to see what we could potentially have on the site. So there would need to be a lot more community engagement to look at what, what people would like to see. But this would be additional pool add-on here with a lap pool, larger lap pool, and then reconfiguration of the pool amenities in here with lazy river and children's pool space and therapeutic swimming area, and then a new mechanical system here that's like contiguous and all in one space, new locker rooms, and then we'd have new fitness space here, upstairs fitness. We'd like to have an outdoor fitness space that could be up on the top roof, and then older adult space here. And then this would be a teen space and some meeting space as well. So then we have some outdoor spaces as well, including this idea to get pickleball in here, which is very popular. So this is the kind of initial concept design. Talking about the current conditions at City Hall now. City Hall, this building here is under 20,000 square feet, and it's about 45,000, we use about 45,000 kilowatts of energy. We currently also have annual allocation for solar garden energy. We're working on our solar purchase agreements right now. We have a lot of solar purchase agreements, and so we're working through those right now to make sure that we have kind of the right sized agreements for each of our facilities. So right now you can see we're exceeding, so we can either allocate to other facilities or we can reduce that. So we're working on that. Currently, heating and cooling systems. So we have one gas rooftop unit right now. It's 20 years old. And I think one of the biggest issues we have with that gas rooftop unit with old buildings like this, you probably are all familiar with this in either workplaces or home places, is when you do any office renovations or anything, none of the heating is aligned, none of the heating or cooling is aligned with the zoning, and so you just have a really inefficient distribution of heat and cooling throughout the building. So we have a lot of that happening here. The building envelope and lighting, we don't have LED throughout, although we're working on getting everything completely brought up to speed. And then our envelope, again, it's an old building. Windows are unsealed and unglazed, and it's leaky. Renewable energy, we don't have on-site solar on this building, and there's some potential there. And we have one EV charger outside with one station with 2 chargers. And we have both fleet vehicles and public charging that happens at this site. So I'm just really going through the conditions as it pertains to our sustainability conditions and opportunities. There are a lot of other issues with all of these facilities that I'm not talking about, whether it's ADA accessibility or whether it's ability for community engagement and community use or interface with staff, council, et cetera. But tonight we're really just focusing on kind of the sustainability elements. So when we talk about proposed improvements, again, this is just a kind of real conceptual design idea. We would want to look more closely. This is kind of a massing study that shows how the building would fit on the site. We would want to look more closely at, sort of solar, passive solar windows, positioning, that type of thing. But this, as you can see, would provide a space and this is the property where the new Civic Center would be. This is South Public Road here, and then the RTD Park and Ride is over here, and then this is Morrow's here. So the Inspire Trail connects right here. So that's the location just north of here. And we would have this space here, which would be the council chambers. This council chambers is very small for a municipality of 30,000 residents. We really only have about space for about 30 residents to participate. It's a pretty small space for council chambers. Also would have our municipal court in this space versus having it at the police station. and would have, that could be space for community meetings. And then this would be space where there would be office space and also community space for like community members to meet with planning and building or engineers for right-of-way permits and all kinds of other activity and services that happen with the city. Okay. Services Center. So this is the facility that provides a lot of our field operations services. So it's our public works, open space, parks, field operations, as well as our fleet maintenance, which is all the city vehicles, everything from our fire trucks to snow plows to large equipment that does our transportation maintenance type of work. So there's a lot that happens out at this site, and that's about 36,000 square feet. We have about 166,000 kilowatt of energy use there. We have no renewable energy out on this site at this time. We also we don't have the electric load right now to meet our needs at this site. So we're looking at doing that upgrade just to meet the current electrical use needs on that site. If we also wanted to do anything with, electrification, even electric vehicles, we have to have much more electrical capacity. So that's something that we're going to be working on. And with this project, we also would have to do a new distribution throughout the whole facility so that we had upgraded electrical throughout the facility. The building is completely uninsulated in almost the entirety of the building. It's basically like manufactured buildings that are bays, but they are used 24/7 for operations. So we really need insulation upgrades in areas where there is, 24/7 operations, and office space and meeting space and that type of thing. And we really need kind of heating and cooling and definitely ventilation improvements, because the ventilation's inefficient and inconsistent. And it's not like an office space ventilation situation. It's where we have a lot of, with the all the work that's done on the vehicles and the fleet mechanics out there, there's a lot of exhaust and chemical use. And so we need to upgrade everything to make sure that we have the ventilation working in the way we need to for the different operations that happen out there. And then the storage and handling, and just kind of just looking at kind of the environmental impacts and improvements we can make around the potentially hazardous materials that we have on that site. So there's a lot of opportunities there based on the current conditions. This is a kind of snapshot of this site. So these two pictures show that without insulation, when it gets cold, sometimes the pipes burst, and then we have, leaks or we have breaks. And this is what our team found when they came back one winter day. So this is a picture of the site, and you can see we'd have improved site security there, and then we could renovate this space here where number 2 is. This area is the staff kind of work space. Because we have added parks, sort of after public works, kind of added everything on. We have multiple break rooms. We have kind of multiple desk spaces. We want to bring everything together, consolidate it, so we have all the offices in one place. We have all the, break room that everybody can share. We have all of the, everything kind of organized and consolidated a little bit better. And then we would also be able to bring over our open space field staff there, and we would also bring over our facilities field staff. So we'd be able to really centralize a lot of those operations, which means they could share tools and they could share vehicles more easily and that type of thing. Then we would expand some of the bays and update the building envelope too, as I mentioned. Okay, any questions about the improvements? Yeah.
So the last building, are there any windows? It looks horrible, I hate to tell you.
I know.
It looks absolutely horrible, and it's all around, it looks like cement all around it. I mean, the poor parks people, I'm sorry, but the poor parks people
yeah. There are some
being
windows.
moved into, tell me that it looks better than this, because this
It
looks
does.
horrible.
This is just sort of a schematic. There are windows. So the middle section of the white those are all bays, so they have the huge doors, but that's where like the trucks all drive in. The first section that you see there is more, like the office space. There are windows in there, and so they get some natural light, but it's a pretty flimsy type of building. It's not, so it needs to be upgraded.
Well, I know it needs to be upgraded,
Yeah.
but you're also adding
We're adding people and we're gonna add some space. Yeah,
windows.
with windows, yes. Wherever we'll have an area that'll be like office space area, it'll be conditioned for office space. And then we'll have the like mechanical areas, which will be sort of the bay areas, and that'll be where all of the, kind of mechanical work happens.
And is it just gonna be all cement all around it? Asphalt? No,
that's
nothing green?
There's a strip of green space there, and then actually, on this side, this area is we use that kind of dirt area. We'll store materials there. Like if Parks is doing a project where maybe they're replacing wood chip or something like that, they'll bring all that material there, and they'll leave it there as station it there while they're working their projects. They'll do that with dirt or other materials. We'll store picnic tables there during the winter and then bring them out to the site. So we use this as a, equipment, materials kind of storage area. And then actually just to the south there is Coal Creek. So it's really pretty just to the south of there.
Okay.
Yeah. And we plan to put showers in, and spaces where when people come in from the field and they're all, like changing rooms where they're messy and dirty, they can come in, they can take off their messy and dirty clothes, and then they can, shower, change into, day clothes. Yeah. Yeah.
What'll happen with the building that we're in now?
We don't know. That'll be a conversation that we haven't had with city council. Yeah. And with the community to see, what the options are to do with this building. And yeah, we haven't had any discussion about that.
So with the rec center, roughly 2008, 2009, the solar panels and the hot water heating on the roof was put in. And at that time was estimated that infrastructure would have about a 20-year effective life. Are you, with this bond rec center, are you including upgrading / replacing all of that?
So we have talked about, the consultant that we work with to do the initial kind of architectural design, they didn't do like a full assessment on that equipment. Our facilities folks think we can get some more years of that on that. We would probably put them back on, and then if we needed to add more to get, more gallons of heating, we would add more. So that'll be something we'll have to look at when we, I'm going to go through all of the, potential improvements and upgrades we can make. And so part of that process will be looking at the opportunities we have, the costs, and sort of we'll have to make decisions at that time about what investments we're going to get kind of the most bang for our buck in terms of, improving efficiency, decarbonization, reducing our energy use, that type of thing. So that will be all part of that conversation, is looking at the lifespan of what we currently have, looking at replacement, looking at if, utilizing what we have, replacing it in maybe 5-10 years. We have to do all of that analysis when we kind of get into the that design phase, deeper into the design phase, because there's going to be a lot of choices.
Hi. Your overview of each of the centers talked about the current conditions in terms of electricity use, but it didn't really talk about gas use. Are you going to be talking about opportunities in the redesign for
Yes.
things like electrification,
Yes.
geothermal, things like that?
Yep. Yeah, I just mentioned what we have for heating in each of the facilities, and as you can see, in most of them, we still have gas heating, gas boilers. So we'll talk about, what we want to look at. yeah.
Yeah, I think when you're doing a proposal like this, it's always good to be completely transparent and tell people what they're going to lose. What is the downside? This is all upside, but every project has a downside. And so there's a couple of things here. With Bob Berger, would you be bulldozing the outdoor hot tub to make that bigger facility?
We don't plan to, I mean, or we plan to have a hot tub. So, I mean, that will be part of the discussion is, you know, where we site everything. So I think we definitely would have that conversation.
Yeah, the outdoor hot tub is the unique feature of that rec center. No other rec center in northern Colorado has anything like that. So I would hate to see that go, and I would like to see that highlighted if it is going to go. Whoever drew your pictures, probably, the architect probably has an idea of what they had in mind for that.
Yeah.
We do have an indoor hot tub already that's small.
Yeah, so we have it right here.
Oh, okay.
So this it kind of moves it over a little bit. Yeah.
So it's gonna stay.
The other thing is, you know, is it going to cost more to go to the rec center after doing these fancy upgrades? And how much more is it going to cost?
Well, so actually, we are, the city has never done a fee study, a rec fee study. We're right now doing a parks, rec, and golf fee study, and we're looking at all of our fees for those programs and services. And so we're looking at that just, you know, for what our current, you know, programs are. And part of that will be looking at, you know, what we're offering the community right now and what the community is interested in and what the desires are for the programs and are we kind of meeting the needs, and then what the costs of providing all the programs are. And part of looking at the costs is what, you know, operational costs are. And so we will have sort of a cost allocation or a cost formula for capturing or calculating that. So we don't have a funding plan that's looking at like raising fees 20% to pay for this. That's not what we're proposing. But I think we are looking at fees, and we're looking at what a fee philosophy would look like and having a policy and a structure that would probably have natural increases. And so, you know, I think that's what we're looking at, but nothing that is, you know, says that once we build this, we're going to raise fees because it's going to be so much nicer.
Because that is also the unique feature of Bob
Yeah,
Berger.
yeah,
It's cheap
yeah.
compared to all the other rec centers in northern Colorado. So, you know, I think it's important to list the trade-offs. The last trade-off is greenness. Lafayette is well on the way to looking like Southern California. Pure asphalt, pure concrete. Every speck of natural, including along the creek path, out east, open space, everything concrete and asphalt. And if you go to the San Fernando Valley, you get an idea of what we will look like if we could keep doing this. And I just wonder if that is something that people talk about, or is that a factor when you're planning? So for this, the last open green space on public road would go to concrete under this plan, for example. And it's just something people should think about. It's a downside.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about, you know, like this is sort of, you know, kind of a little bit, it's a little tangential, but sort of like other options for around sustainability or other ideas around sustainability, like green roofs, like some other like, you know, ways that we can address kind of some of the concretization of everything. So we can, yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
Well, we are adding a pocket park.
We are adding a pocket.
We are adding a pocket park.
Yeah.
That's a hard one to say on public, so
We are.
it may not be as nice, but it'll be added.
It'll be nice. All right. Okay, we'll keep going, yeah. Okay. So this is going to be a lot of information. I'm going to try to, it's just a lot of information. That's all I can say. So we'll get through it, and then I'll take any questions you have, and like Katie said, we'll do our best. We're gonna go through kind of some of the improvements and impacts that we're hoping to make through this, through these projects. Recognizing that we're not going to be able to do everything, and we are going to have to continue to meet our goals of, creating quality community amenities, and also, our other community goals, financial responsibility. And so we're going to kind of lay out some of the potential improvements and impacts, and know that through the design process, there's going to be a lot of kind of discovery and analysis, and we'll probably have to make some trade-offs, but these are some of the things that we're looking at as potential opportunities around sustainability. So let's just start with our greenhouse gas reductions opportunities. So for the city, we only have 2021 data around greenhouse gases, and we don't have city facility specific data. So we are doing a greenhouse gas inventory this year, and we should have municipal sector data. We won't have that till the end of 2025. But we do, of course, know that commercial buildings are a really big chunk of our greenhouse gas emissions. And so there's a big opportunity there with greenhouse gas reduction. So 39% of Lafayette's greenhouse gas emissions come from commercial buildings, 35% from residential buildings, 24% from transportation, and 2% from waste. So we know that commercial buildings, like city facilities, is an opportunity to work towards reducing our greenhouse gas emissions as in the community as a whole. So we're doing a lot as a city to both impact those greenhouse gas emissions through our building codes, and so that will impact other commercial buildings that are coming online in the city, and also residential buildings in the city. The city has adopted the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code, also called the IECC, and the Colorado Model Electric Ready and Solar Ready Code, which means that buildings that are built have to be electric ready. They at least have to be built and configured so that they're ready for electrification. And we're one of few local governments in the region that we have these enhanced code amendments for electric required. So we're just looking ahead. 2024 IECC building codes, they may be adopted as soon as 2027. And net zero building code is being explored. We have a regional cohort that we're working with to look at net zero building codes. So we don't know exactly the timeline on that. And then we're also looking at updating the landscape code as soon as potentially 2026. So there's a lot of opportunities that will potentially come online in the next couple of years that these buildings that the city would build would be consistent with. So for heating and cooling, we would look at electric options where feasible in all new facilities. So with something like the Civic Center, it would be a totally new build. And so that would be an opportunity to look at electrification from the beginning. We would be able to configure the electric load where it would need to be from the beginning. We'd be able to look at a system potentially like a geothermal heat pump system in a new facility for the pools, because we're putting in like an all new aquatic system. We could look at doing, electrification there, or looking at the most, efficient systems there. So we really, in those cases, have the opportunity, I think, to look at the most efficient options. So we can look really, I think, have some good opportunities there with the services center. Maybe not quite as much there with heating and cooling, but we are right now, every time we're replacing our boilers, we're moving towards electric. So we're doing that. And with the HVAC systems, we're kind of limited in our existing infrastructure, with most of our buildings, like with the library. We just replaced our one HVAC system, and we're doing the other one. And we're just limited by the infrastructure in those buildings. So it's just cost prohibitive for us to do it with the existing buildings. So we will do, I think we'll explore doing, the best we can with heating and cooling in these buildings. So I think there's good opportunities there. With the energy efficiency building envelope, we will, with the IECC, we will have really the most efficient with energy efficient windows, roofs, walls, doors, foundation, and insulation. We'll get some real upgrades with city services, and then of course with LED lights and lighting controls. And then with the new pool pumps, the other facilities we've talked to who have installed new pool pumps and new recirculation systems have been able to reduce their electrical costs by 30 to 40%. And then, of course, the addition of electric vehicle charging stations, more of them at all of our facilities. So we talked a little bit about geothermal for renewable energy at new facilities. Willoughby Corner, which is the new affordable housing development, has all geothermal. So we have a new development here that we can have some lessons learned from in talking and working with BCHA about how they accomplish that with a new facility and a new building. We will look at solar options for new facilities and, again, look at what the best option is for on-site solar versus, solar purchase. And to your question, Frank, utilizing the existing solar thermal system at the BBRC, and then exploring if we can expand it or if we need to replace it for additional pool volumes. And then also looking at subscription options. So if Renewable Connect or WindSource, or continuing to buy solar if that's, a better option versus doing our own on-site. So those are going to be some key options. We have started to move towards xeriscaping for several city facilities. This is the library, and you might have seen this xeriscaping. We also have xeriscaping now here at City Hall as well, and at Fire Station 1. So xeriscaping will be one of the water conservation measures that we will, be applying at our facilities, and then installation of efficient fixtures at our new and our renovated facilities, which can especially make an impact at the rec center, and then also at the service center as well. Looking at and improving our water reclamation systems at city services. I think I mentioned that we have a lot of different uses out there with all of the mechanical equipment and all of the heavy equipment. And so really looking at our systems and how we can improve those out there around water reclamation. Regenerative pool filtering, that can help reduce our water consumption significantly. And then the backwash system at the pool, we have some opportunities there to reduce our water use. And this will all be part of our upgrade to our systems there that our architect has initially identified. And then our new piping, pumps, and accessible mechanical room, they will reduce leaks and then our duration of the repair, which is really important because when the pool was leaking at its most kind of significant, we were losing thousands of gallons of water every day. So that was just a significant, water loss impact to the city. Okay. We've visited some other communities who have done projects, both City Hall projects, and talked to some communities who have done some other similar projects, and talked to them about sustainable materials and use of locally sourced materials was a priority and approach that they had used, and one of their metrics was sort of distance of shipping taken under consideration, and so they kind of identified a regional, how close they wanted their materials to come from and their materials to be sourced from and to originate from. So that's a strategy that we would look at. following LEED best practices, and even if you don't get a LEED certification for the building, it's you know, kind of a tool that we could follow those best practices, and then to support construction, demolition, waste diversion best practices throughout the process would be an approach we would take, and then material transparency. So just really to look at what materials we're using, know kind of what's in the materials, you know, kind of what chemicals, and see what you know, what kind of information and transparency we can find on materials to know what the sort of quality and construction is of those materials. And this kind of speaks to the concrete jungle comment, is sort of the environmental resilience aspect, and looking a little bit from the perspective of, you know, how can we manage sort of, you know, stormwater, rainwater, retaining water in the soils, looking for nature-based solutions in our design, and how we can sort of support natural ecosystems in our design and in our construction, and sort of surrounding natural ecosystems. Things like rain gardens and bioswales, and limiting impervious surfaces, looking at cool roofs or reflective materials that will reduce heat absorption, and then thinking about, you know, mitigation measures, so flood and wildfire mitigation, landscape and construction materials that consider, you know, risk reduction. So taking kind of that lens as well. And then, of course, community resilience. We just got a sustainability intern that started last week, and they're with ICLEI, and that's a kind of international climate organization, and they are doing kind of a study for us on resilience hubs, and looking at 6 locations in Lafayette for potential resilience hubs in the community, and the BDRC is one of those locations. And so they're going to be looking at what the characteristics of our resilience hubs around, you know, whether that's, do they have good renewable energy potential? Could we have like a microgrid there? Are they accessible? You know, just all the kind of dimensions that we might want to look at for residents to have access in either a large-scale disaster or even a minor disaster. So looking at community resilience and how these facilities might play a role in that. So looking at the addition of older adult services at the rec center and teen space at the rec center, so it feels more like a community center to people and people feel familiar and welcome there. Considering ADA accessibility for older adults, individuals with disabilities, and children and youth and families. And then again, kind of considering the sites as a resilience hub, and also potential for community gardens and sort of subsistence. Okay, so a lot of things to consider, a lot of potential ideas and options that we're going to have to look at as a community as we move forward with these discussions. And does anybody have questions on those thoughts or ideas before we move on to next steps?
Do we know how much the city is spending on electricity and energy? And what with, obviously, there's been a lot of thought and discussion about ways to reduce that. And so the question would be, what's the starting point now, and what will it be, you know, as part of doing an ROI, if you will. Secondly, the same question for water. You know, how much, you know, because obviously we lost a lot of water in that pool, there's no question. So where would that wind up being, you know, from a dollars and cents point of view on energy and water?
So I don't have that information. What we have heard from some other communities as a range is that going to a very energy efficient build from one that is, say, 40 or 50 years old, you're looking at somewhere from like a 25 to 30% reduction in energy costs. So, and I don't, that's if you go to like electrification. And so, I don't know how that scales if you're doing, a whole package, if you're doing all of the energy efficiency measures that I just went through, and you're doing full electrification, and you're doing, so that is kind of, we would have to look at, which of those give you the most sort of bang for your buck, and what would be the top tier, and what they cost, and then what we would sort of see as kind of a must-have, and then what we would see as sort of like nice to have. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about any backup power for these new city buildings when the electricity does go out?
We have a kind of a generator. We have generators at many of our buildings, and we have kind of a generator replacement plan and a generator purchasing plan right now as kind of a part of our resiliency planning. And so that's what we're doing right now, and we would probably do the same. And then, I know then there's a conversation about how those generators are fueled, and but I think that we would talk about generators for those. And if they're a resilience hub, then we would prioritize them, and probably have to figure out what size and type of power we needed for those locations.
So not at every building.
Right now, no. Mm-mm. Yeah, no. Yeah.
So you mentioned microgrid. Is this something that Excel will be running out of their own grid, or is that something we would be running separately from Excel?
I can't answer that question. Probably Lizzie could. Yeah. Probably our sustainability director could. I can't answer it. Yeah.
A couple of questions. You mentioned current building code, and could you just clarify whether the current code in Lafayette requires all electric for a new building, and whether or not it also allows gas as part of the equation? And then secondly, you've talked about electrification a couple of times. Can you say a few words about what that means and why that's important from a greenhouse gas reduction standpoint?
Mm-hmm. Our current code does require electrification, right?
There's some exceptions. But
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Our current code does require electrification. So from a greenhouse gas perspective, I mean, right now we have, I don't have the data on who's using gas, natural gas, but the greenhouse gas emissions from natural gas are higher than the greenhouse gas emissions from electric. And so moving towards electric, and we know there's work to be done to increase the electric grid and the amount of energy that we have through that. But that is basically a large source of our emissions. So that's that's our part of our strategy. Yeah.
Hi. Just to follow up, respond, the general view on electrification, the benefits of electrification is that over time our grid is going to be moving more and more into renewables. And so as we continue looking at building for years in advance, we want to be setting ourselves up to be taking advantage of that cleaner grid in the future and not tying ourselves to natural gas that will continue to be emitting higher carbon levels. I also had a question and now I lost it. So excuse me, I'll come back to that when I'm ready.
Thank you. She's more sustainability expertise than.
This comes back to the question over here of creating a Southern California, the heat island. Have we looked at things like green roofs or moving your community garden to a roof? Or at the very least, putting solar panels on the roofs of all the buildings? Because the drawings I saw are just basic generic roofs. A green roof, though, it can keep the building cooler in the summer. There's probably a little more maintenance involved. And then the other thing is, and it might not apply so much to the city buildings because they're mostly daytime use, but I live around the corner from Willoughby Commons, whatever it is. And it looks like not a battleship, a cruise ship at night. It is so lit up. Are we looking at light pollution? Those are two big issues that concern me.
Yeah, I think the green roof idea, I mean, that's something I know our sustainability team, when we talk about things that we want to look at with these projects, those are all ideas that we want to explore, and as well as on-site solar as an option. So I think, again, we will look at what we know on-site solar can be expensive, and so we look at what the returns would be on that. And if you have a building that's in a great location to capitalize on solar and it's positioned right to benefit, significantly from that, then that could be a really great option. And if it's not, then it could be a better option to do something else, like a green roof or something like that. So our plans right now are really very, very conceptual. And so those will be things that we'll look at. And then I don't know if we've talked about light.
Yeah, like you said, since these are mostly city facilities, but I will say kind of more broadly speaking, we adopted a wildlife strategic plan, I believe last year, because time is funny. I don't know what year we're in right now, but as part of that, it does look at kind of how the light affects our wildlife corridors and things like that, and are working with a code update with our land use working group to identify kind of different ways where we can minimize that, especially at nighttime. So it's very separate from kind of these projects, but it is kind of out there on the radar of things that we're working on. Thank you. You're very welcome.
I remembered my question. And to follow up on yours, also, maybe I would suggest considering down reflectors on lights. I know that is an excellent way to help wildlife. Anyway, my question is that these all sound like fabulous things that I fully support and get behind in terms of the efficiency, sustainability ideals, I guess, that you're presenting. And I'm curious, maybe this is the next step. The next step section is what the process is in determining which of those actually will make it into the finished products.
Yeah. Well, so that's I'll talk about the next steps immediately, but the next steps for that will be, well, why don't we just go there? Because right now, we're in really the next steps around council's decision-making if they want to move these projects forward and if they want to move forward with any kind of ballot measure and financing for these projects. So we've had several conversations with council, and they did some project prioritization and came to these 3 projects as the priorities. We did some financial analysis with them and shared that with them. They requested some polling. And so we're right now in that red box phase where we just wrapped up community polling, where we did a kind of statistical poll where we're finding out where the voters of Lafayette sit on these issues. And we are conducting engagement. And this is a part of that. We also went to several of the boards and commissions to talk to them about it. And we have had stations set up at several city buildings and facilities to get feedback from people. We did our own survey, and we're going to take all of this feedback and compile it and bring it to City Council on May 27th. And then City Council will discuss and decide what their next steps will be. And that direction from city council will kind of determine the next steps. So in the green are some potential next steps. They could decide to move forward this year. They could decide to wait. They could decide on any combination of, projects to move forward or not. And if they do decide to move forward, they would have to decide on ballot language, certify that. There'd be some more community outreach, and then it would go to the voters. So when it goes to the voters, then, and if voters approve what's on the ballot, then we would have the funding to be able to start the design process. And the design process for these projects would vary. The city services project would take probably about 6 to 9 months for design. That wouldn't be a huge community input process, because that's really more of a kind of internal process, yeah. But the other two, the rec center and the civic center, would have 12 to 18 months of design, and that would be, that would really be getting all of the information about what the options are around what we can do, like what's feasible on the site around any of these measures. And, is solar feasible? Is geothermal feasible? Is, all these things, what's feasible? What are the best options? What would that look like for the building? What's the design of the building going to look like? Could we fit pickleball, and how big is the hot tub going to be? All those kinds of conversations, and we would be getting community input on all of that during that time before construction would start. Does that help? Okay. All right. So this is the last community meeting, but the survey is open until tomorrow. And that is the link to the survey if you would like to take it. You can also put comments on the boards outside. We have sticky notes. You can put comments. And you can also email questions to communications@lafayetteco.gov. And we'll stick around if you have other questions. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thanks for your time.